You ever see something so cruel, so unnecessary that it makes your blood boil, but then, the very next day, the universe flips the script in a way nobody saw coming? That's exactly what happened when a little black girl, quiet and sweet, walked into a luxury mall holding her billionaire father's hand, and walked out humiliated, heartbroken, and crying. But by the next day, everyone who looked down on her would be begging for forgiveness, and the truth that came out would change everything. All right? Listen to this. 8-year-old Amara was the kind of child people noticed, not because she wanted attention, but because she carried herself with this quiet dignity that most adults didn't even have. She'd been adopted 3 years earlier by one of the most powerful businessmen in the country, Charles Whitmore, a man whose name was synonymous with wealth, philanthropy, and old money. He was a billionaire who could buy anything, but the one thing he truly wanted was a family. After losing his wife and son in a tragic accident years before, Charles had lived in silence, drowning in guilt and loneliness. That is, until the day he met Amara. He'd gone to visit a children's charity his company funded, the kind where kids from rough backgrounds would come for tutoring and meals. That's where he saw her, sitting alone in the corner, reading a worn-out book, her small hands tracing the words slowly, like they meant everything to her. When he asked the staff about her, they told him she was the daughter of a single mother who died the year before. No relatives, no home. Something inside Charles broke open that day. He started visiting more often, bringing books, helping with homework, just sitting with her like she was the only person in the room. And before long, the papers were signed. He adopted her, brought her home, and told the world, "She's my daughter, and I'll make sure she never feels unwanted again." Now, you'd think that would be the end of the story, right? That love conquers all. The rich man saves the orphaned girl, and they live happily ever after. But life doesn't work like fairy tales, especially when race, pride, and privilege collide. See, even though Charles saw Amara as his own, not everyone else did. The high society people he mingled with whispered behind his back. They said he'd done it for attention, or that she didn't fit in with the family image. Some called her lucky, others said worse. And even though Charles tried to protect her from the gossip, kids at her new school repeated what their parents said. Then came the day everything blew up. Charles had promised Amara a day out at the mall. It wasn't just any mall, it was the Whitmore Galleria, named after his family. A massive, gleaming palace of luxury where everyone knew who owned the place. Charles didn't go out often, but that day he wanted to show her something new, something normal. She was so excited she picked out her best little yellow dress and held his hand the whole way in, but from the moment they stepped inside, people stared. Some with confusion, some with judgment. They saw a powerful white billionaire in an expensive suit and a small black girl calling him Dad. They went into a high-end clothing store. Amara saw a pink jacket on display and her eyes lit up. She turned to him and whispered, "Daddy, can I try it?" He smiled, nodded, and told the saleswoman politely, "Could we have this in her size, please?" The woman blinked, clearly thrown off. Then she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, that jacket's quite expensive. Are you sure she needs to try it on?" Charles's expression hardened. "I didn't ask about the price. I asked for her size." Still, the woman hesitated. "We don't usually let customers handle the display items. Maybe there's something more affordable on the other rack?" The entire store went silent. Amara looked up, confused, whispering, "Did I do something wrong?" And before Charles could speak, another shopper, a woman dripping in designer clothes, laughed under her breath. "They'll just let anyone in these days, won't they?" That's when Amara's little heart cracked. She put the jacket down quietly and said, "It's okay, Daddy. I don't need it." Her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to be brave. Charles's face went cold as stone. Without another word, he took her hand and left the store. But everyone watching knew something was coming, because when a man like Charles Whitmore gets angry, the world feels it. The next morning, that same mall woke up to chaos. News crews, security, and store owners were all buzzing. A press release had gone out overnight. Effective immediately, Charles Whitmore had revoked every luxury brand's lease inside the Whitmore Galleria. He owned the land, the building, everything, and in one move, he'd shut it all down. Every single store was locked. Every employee was told not to return. The man who'd been called the quiet billionaire had just sent a message that roared through the entire city. Then at noon, he called a press conference right in front of that mall. He stood there with Amara by his side. Her little yellow dress now paired with that same pink jacket the store refused to let her try. Charles looked out at the cameras and said, "Yesterday, my daughter was humiliated in a mall with my family's name on it, by people who judged her not by her heart, but by her skin. Let me make this clear. If you can't respect her, you can't profit under my roof. This building will reopen, not as a playground for the privileged, but as a community space for children who deserve better than prejudice." The crowd went wild. Reporters tried to shout questions, but he turned, smiled down at Amara, and said quietly, "Come on, sweetheart. Let's go home." That moment, it broke the internet. Within hours, hashtags like Dr. Whitmore and Amara and Father of the Year were trending worldwide. News outlets called it the stand heard around the world. And that store clerk? She lost her job, sure. But more than that, she learned a lesson people would talk about for years. Never underestimate the power of dignity. The next week, construction crews started transforming the mall. The luxury stores were replaced by libraries, learning centers, health clinics, and small business spaces for women and minority entrepreneurs. Charles named it the Amara Center. He told reporters, "This place will represent what my daughter represents to me: hope, strength, and change." As for Amara, she didn't fully understand the impact of what had happened. She just knew her dad had her back. She'd whisper to him sometimes before bed, "Daddy, you didn't have to do all that for me." And he'd smile and say, "I didn't do it for you. I did it for every kid who'll walk in there and know they belong. And that pink jacket?" She wore it proudly every year on the anniversary of that day, until she grew out of it. Then she donated it to the new youth center's museum display, under a plaque that read, "What was meant to humiliate me became my crown." Years later, when Amara grew up, she took over the foundation her father built. She focused on education and equality, especially for children who looked like her. She said in one interview, "The day I was humiliated wasn't the worst day of my life. It was the day the world showed me who my father really was." And here's the part that sticks with me every time I think about this story. We talk about wealth like it's the goal, but the truth is character is the real currency. You can have billions in your bank account and still be bankrupt in empathy. But when a man uses his power to uplift the powerless, that's real legacy. So, the next time someone tells you your worth depends on where you come from or what you look like, remember Amara? Remember how a single moment of cruelty turned into a movement of compassion. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't anger, it's grace. If this story hit you the way it hit me, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment below. Tell me what you'd have done if you were in Charles's shoes or Amara's. Because here on Black Visionaries, we tell stories that remind the world. Being underestimated is just the first chapter. What matters is how you rise after it.